Have you ever wondered which relationship heals everything else? After losing his son, Jonathan Aslay discovered the hardest truth. You can't heal from toxic relationships until you love yourself. If you're recovering from betrayal, divorce, or emotional abuse, this conversation will help you rebuild worth and boundaries. Have you ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it? Like the person you love was slowly chipping away at your sense of self?
Believe me, we have been there. Different marriages, but to the same man, with the same toxic pattern. But God was still working.
We're Lizzie and Deana, women of faith, survivors, and truth tellers.
Surviving toxic relationships is for any woman stuck in confusion, healing after betrayal, or just searching for her voice again.
You are not crazy.
You are deeply loved. Hey, welcome everybody. Today we have Jonathon Aslay. I just want to introduce him because I think he has an incredible story, and you guys are going to really enjoy this story. And it's a very heartfelt, real life, nothing sugar-coated kind of story. But the focus of one of America's leading midlife, self-love, life coaches, he has expanded into a deeper, essential philosophy of what it truly means to love. After he lost his 19-year-old son Connor in 2018, Jonathon's grief led him on a soul-searching inner journey where he became aware of an often overlooked dimension of the dating conversation. He realized that the relationship process reveals the most common emotional health issue faced by many singles seeking a partner, especially in midlife. Can I say that?
Absolutely.
A distressing lack of self-worth, self-regard, and self-love. And that is so true for midlife. I will tell you, the transitions in midlife, all of that can make you spiral into a real huge question about your worth. So I love that you're putting that into words. So today, he's on a mission to encourage both men and women to fully love themselves with this book. What the heck is self-love anyway? It's packed with fun, engaging, spiritual, and personal growth practices. So, Jonathon, cannot wait to have this conversation with you today. I think it's going to expand into every dimension of midlife, self-love, self-worth, and also loss, grief, and reinvention. It's all wrapped up into one. So you can reach so many audiences with your story, and I'm grateful that you're here. And thank you so much for taking your time, and carry it away.
Oh my gosh. So, by the way, click double speed to listen to this. So, if you're watching it right now, I'm just saying this tongue in cheek. So, I'll just give you a quick backstory. So, 20 years ago, after turning 40, I found myself going through a divorce. Found myself at the exact same time I lost my high-end corporate job. And then the market crash a few years later, where I financially got wiped out. And my identity was pummeled. I mean, absolutely pummeled. And men oftentimes associate their identity with their professional life, their capacity to generate resources and that sort of thing. And that emotional depression led me to drugs, alcohol, going to bed wishing I didn't wake up. And one of my drugs of choice was actually online dating. Right around that time, online dating began flourishing, with, there was AOL personals, Yahoo personals, and then Match.com was birthed around that time. So just to give someone some backstory, 20 years ago, there used to be a couple dating sites that aren't even in existence anymore. And when I said it was my drug of choice, what was ended up happening was I was reaching out to women regularly because I had a hole inside of myself. I was like, I need you to completely. I need someone to love me so I can feel good about myself. And I was communicating with women all across the country, sometimes 5 or 6 women at the same time. Back then I had windows open, like chat box open, and talking to 7 at a time. It was kind of insane. Because what I now realize this after the fact, connecting the dots, I was thirsty for connection. And through this communication with women, I would hear them share their stories about their divorce. I'd roughly say 75% of singles over 45 years old are divorced that are in the marketplace, in the dating marketplace. So hearing them share their stories, I just developed friendships with a lot of women, and it was almost replacing therapy for me. In other words, it was therapeutic to have these conversations. But what was also interesting, beside the fact that I was physically going out with dates with women who live locally, I was communicating with women all across the country, and then something interesting happened. I'd get calls. Hey, Jonathan, I know we're friends, but would you look at my dating profile and tell me what you think to make it better from the guy's point of view? And then I'd say, do this, 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 and this. And then they would do everything I'd say. And then I'd get this phone call. Jonathan, I met this great guy based on your recommendations. Would you look at his profile and give me the male perspective of what you think about this guy? And I'm like, okay, like I was naively doing this in the sense that, or intuitively doing this in the sense, but it wasn't from a professional standpoint. And I realized I had a knack. I had a knack of pegging guys, where they were at emotionally. And pretty soon I jokingly said, like the FBI have serial or profiles for serial killers. I could profile serial dater, serial monogamous, nice guys, bad boy, and the guy looking for you. So my professional life was birthed around 2010, about 5 years later. And thankfully, in the last 15 years, I've developed quite a bit of a following, several 100,000 followers on YouTube. I'm now recognized as a top dating and relationship coach, particularly in midlife, because I kind of focused on that divorce demographic from the male perspective, and I mostly work with women. But here's where the story gets a little bit interesting, coming back to, I went through this crash, and what I recognize is the first 20 years of my life was learning a script that was handed down to me from my parents. It was go to college, get a job, meet someone, get married, buy a house, start a family. That was the script for the first 20 years of my life. The next 20 years of my life was following the script. And I'll be candid with you, I was a very unconscious husband. I hyper-focused on being the provider, protector. I really didn't have any emotional IQ. I didn't have any skills on regulating my emotions. I had poor communication skills. I wasn't, and I was not the best of husbands, and we got a divorce. When I had this identity crisis at age 40, I realized that it was time to work on myself. I was a little addicted to drugs and alcohol, I'll be candid with you. I was addicted to online dating. I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up a lot of days, but I began a journey of personal development, self-help, spiritual work, and therapy. And over the next 20 years, I was dismantling that first 20. My first 20 years was learning the script. The next 20 years was living the script. And the next 20 years was dismantling the script that love exists outside of ourselves. That's what the script was, very built on materialism, chasing money, chasing, all those, the chasing types of things. And it wasn't until my son passed away in 2018 that I began doing a real deep dive into what it means to love myself. And by the way, some people get turned off by the terminology self-love, so let me make it simpler. Self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-reliance, self-discipline, all these juicy self-words are wrapped in the heart of love. I tried to make it short. That's why I listened to this at double speed. But that's kind of how my journey got to where I am today.
What a way to even just dissect the 20 years of life. First 20 years was developing your script, the next 20 was living it, and then the next 20 was dismantling. I've never heard it put that way, and I'm like, that's really accurate.
Yeah.
I think that what we all thought in our earlier years, get married, have the kids, blah, 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 career. And then you get midlife and you're like, no, this is, this is a different route than I was expecting to take at the end.
Well, you know what's
Exactly.
interesting, Lizzie, is that it's where the blueprint collided with my reality at age 40. It was like this was the blueprint I was taught, and this was my reality, and they collided together. And there was this calamity for me anyway. And that identity crisis was a, yeah, it was a crisis of the soul, so to speak. And my soul was yearning for something, but I didn't have the tools yet. I didn't do the inner work. I was like beginning the process. And I'll be candid for everyone listening, look, I am not here this evolved guru with the white beard and all that kind of stuff, you know, like I'm thinking in like India or something like that. I feel like I'm still scratching the ant's belly in the area of self-awareness. And sadly, I think we humans live in a very delusional or illusion framework. And that's why the concept of awakening, waking up, all these things is to break from the scripts that we were raised with and really recognize that our life trajectory is within our power. And it starts with loving ourselves, because the most important relationship you're ever going to have is the relationship with self. It's the one you live with your entire life. You know, everything else, like, and I learned with my son, people come and go from your life. And it's also to really lean, when I say the word love, I also want to attach to the word love a real appreciation or gratitude for all the blessings. And I know for many of you watching, you might be in a deep, dark place in your life. I was there. I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up. And yet I'm grateful for that pain, because it woke me up into a new reality for myself.
I think that's kind of a major direction, even for women that have gone through, toxic or very abusive relationships. It is that missing component of self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, because Deana and I know that self-esteem is huge, of just even making better choices and giving
Yeah.
you more bold and confidence. And I do think that sometimes we hit midlife, and even though we've kind of had even if you've had kind of more of a success thing, you kind of things do crumble. Like, I've been amazed at how many people at midlife, they had all this things they were working for and these goals to achieve, and then they get 45 plus, especially, and they're like, "Is this it? Is this
Yeah.
is this it?" And and then it's like I think people kind of tend to finally go deep in their brain, going, "I think I got a bigger issue here, that I'm thinking that all this other stuff is going to make me build more self-worth or confidence or whatever it is." And it's not. It's not. We crumble and we fall apart.
Well, so it's interesting. I have a dear friend. He's 80 years old, and he was talking. I mean, and I just turned 60 recently, and he said to me, "My 60s were my best decade ever." You know, and when I said that, I'm like, no, I kind of wished my 40s were, but I didn't have. I was unconscious in my 40s. I had to unravel everything I learned, for the next 20 years. And rather than look at it like I'm too old to appreciate life at age 60, this is the time I'm grateful that I'm living life to the fullest. And so it's fascinating to me. I just want to say, when I have a client comes to me who's 45 years old and they feel like life is over, I'm like, can I curse, by the way? I'm like, fuck, you'd like, I have clients that would kill to be 45 again and learning this stuff, kind of things. Um, you know, Wherever you're at in your life, at least the way I frame it, it's not about looking at the glass half empty or half full. A lot of people think of it from that vantage point, that it's half empty. But I also recognize that there's still abundance. Every single day is precious. One day can feel like a lifetime if we learn how, I believe, when we learn to genuinely love ourselves. And again, really quickly, self-love isn't bubble baths and massages and getting manicures and pedicures. That's self-care, okay? It's really nurturing the little 6-year-old inside of us. We all have a little emotional 6-year-old inside of us that, quite frankly, is a bit scared. The world can be scary from an emotional standpoint. And self-love is just giving a hug to that little 6-year-old inside as the adult saying, everything's going to be okay. I've got your back. And when we can step into that empowerment, and one of the reasons why I love working with women, women love, women are fascinated with like, how do relationships work? Men just want to learn how to meet women. I mean, most men, it's like, just teach me where to meet women and how to have confidence with women. Women want to understand how the mechanics, how this piece works and this piece works and whatnot. That's why I love working with women, because they're more curious from that vantage point. And they truly want, I see this frequently, they want to improve themselves. And then they come to me, well, Jonathon, I want a guy like that too. And I'm here to say, men are awakening at rapid paces. Oftentimes it takes a humbling event like what I experienced. It takes a humbling event. And sadly, a lot of women don't want to date those men who have humbling events, but I'm just sharing with you, those men that have had those humbling events oftentimes step into greater power with a bit of love, compassion, empathy, and that sort of thing. So it's a fascinating journey, this thing called life. Let me just say that.
So, Jonathon, I'm super curious. Like, I have 2 questions. Number 1, how did losing Connor bring you to a place of eventually finding self-love? And number 2, for the women out there, because I mean, it's very common for us women, especially in midlife, when, like you don't look the same, you don't feel the same, you don't have the same energy and weight and all the things that affect us women. You're not looked at anymore, all the things. So Connor, like, how did that help you kind of come to that point of self-love? And B, women that are out there that are like, I don't know how to love myself. I look in the mirror, I try to like self-care, like you said, I try to do all the things, but I freaking hate myself. Like, what's your advice on those 2 things? Like, what got you to that place? And for a woman, what's your advice to help us get to that place?
Sure, I love this question. So let me dive into the Connor one first. So I think what it was interesting was, while I got the phone call, from my ex-wife that the paramedics were there. He had an accident, and paramedics were there and tried to resuscitate him. And then as I was driving to their home, I got a call like he was gone. And I found myself in a state of shock. Like, it was kind of fascinating. I'm not saying this, I'm fascinated with how much I was in shock. Like, I was operating from just a mechanical point of view instead of like this spastic, erratic emotional point of view, because I think I was in deep shock. And I remember the first couple days, I was kind of a slightly walking zombie. But what was interesting is when I came home from his mother's home back to my home, I saw this yellow butterfly sail right in front of me. Right where I live, there's like this, there's like not a little river, little pond with lots of vegetation. I saw this yellow butterfly kind of cruise by me, and I thought, it's kind of interesting. And then next day when I'm leaving my place, I see this yellow butterfly again. And then the next day, or later that evening, I'm now on my balcony on the other side of the complex, the condo complex I live in, and I'm on the highest floor, and I see this yellow butterfly buzzing around me. And I just had this strong belief that that was him. He's like, I'm okay. Whether that's true or not, that's what I believe. So when I was preparing for his funeral, I really sat with, I could grieve with suffering or I could grieve with love. Like, I was like really sitting with, okay, I could be here suffering. I mean, that's one way to grieve and in deep agony and pain. And I said, what would it be like to grieve with love? And to just be in a state of appreciation, a state of gratitude. And when I shared the eulogy, I mean, I invited everybody. We have a choice. We can go for suffering or love. And I'm inviting everyone to just adopt whatever that means for them, to love. And I know it was a powerful speech because I had so many people come up to me and just said, wow, I never heard that before at a funeral. So then I started, and I had been blogging about self-love before, and I'm like, I was writing actually another book called Compassionate Dating. And I'm like, I'm going to go into self-love because I'd been blogging about it. And I just started, I took all my blogs and I found a writer to help me clean up all of my thoughts and form my book. And it was like how I think of self love as like, when the pilot when you're getting on an airplane says, in case of cabin pressure change, oxygen mask will drop. And if you're traveling with small children, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And in other words, we can't help anyone else until we help ourselves. And that oxygen is love. And from that vantage point, it motivated me to get this. I published it within 9 months of the exact date he passed. It hit Amazon bestseller within 24 hours. Very proud of that. I've sold, it's been making it makes my car payment every year. Every month. It pays the insurance, the gas. This book has done really well. We have over 800 reviews on Amazon. I'm very proud of that. And it's a very simplistic way at looking at love it yourself. It's very basic. It is not some gigantic, like, oh my God, it's a thought experiment. It's just a basic way of looking at loving oneself. So that's how that was birthed. Your second question, I think that's a great question. I believe women have a propensity, particularly at midlife, to really beat themselves up. I'm not young enough. I'm not thin enough. I don't have, flawless skin. You're bombarded by a beauty industry that's telling you you're not good enough. Every magazine that was, out there is just telling women you're not good enough. Certainly there's there's age discrimination that happens in midlife, based on beauty. A lot of men in midlife seek younger women. We're bombarded from that too. So I can understand why women feel a sense of, I don't want to say depression, but, and not only frustration, I get that piece, but a sense of
it's like less than.
Yeah, less than, but even like
Less than.
discouraged is what
Yeah.
less than and discouraged. I can
Yeah.
see that. By the way, for the record, I've had 3 significant relationships since my divorce 20 years ago. The first woman was 10 years older than me, saggy boobs and wrinkles. Please forgive me. She would kill me that I said that. I was in my late 40s. She was in her late 50s when we met. Then my next relationship, she was 15 months older than me. And my current relationship, we're 6 months apart. I am actually the older guy now. So I'm just saying that there are men that will
You
date
poor
women their
thing.
own age. Okay? There are men that will date their own.
You know what? I love that because you're right. There is such a common theme where, even midlife crises. What do you think of when you think of a midlife crisis? Oh, he ran off and got A, a younger woman, and B, like a Corvette.
Yeah.
Like that's what he got because he's been eyeing, because he doesn't want to feel old. So he's like, oh, this woman who's 20 years my junior is attracted to me and that makes me feel young. And so it's like this, but you see it everywhere. You see it everywhere.
My
So
midlife
yeah,
crisis, I started personal development, self-help, spiritual work, and ayahuasca retreats to work on my shit. So
I love that. I love that. That's rare
that's what I
though.
did with
That is rare, Jonathan. That
well,
doesn't normally happen.
no, and
So
I
I'm
get
just saying,
that. And
good for
even my
you.
girlfriend says, look, you are unique. Now, part of it is because I do this for a living, so I get that. But I also want to encourage women is that, believe it or not, like I go to a lot of self-help retreats and stuff, and it's almost 50-50 now, men and women. It's gotten to that place, whether you go to Joe Dispenza, you go to Tony Robbins, you go to an Abraham Hicks, you go to, I loved Wayne Dyer back in the day, and Ram Dass, just to name a few people that I follow, and there's so many. And you'd be surprised how many men go to this, because men are seeking too. Yes, there's a lot of superficial, unconscious men, but here's the thing. If your focus is on those men and you're blaming the dating marketplace because of those men, then you'll be blind to see the men who are actually emotionally mature, got decent relationship skills, your lifestyles can blend, they have shared values. The hard part is this thing called chemistry, this thing like we are so indoctrinated in needing something, this radical chemistry to ignite the relationship. And because we don't experience this, we oftentimes pass over some really great people, men and women alike. And it's interesting because even in my relationship right now, we actually didn't have, we weren't each other's type on our first date. We were like, oh, nice person, but just wasn't feeling that intensity or anything. But we had this gigantic curiosity about one another. So when we met, we had this 5-hour meeting. We had a great time, talked like two friends. We ended up spending the next 10 days on the phone talking as if we're best friends. We were just we had so much in common, so many things like this. And we're like, God, it's a shame we don't have that, that, I don't want to say chemistry, but that intensity. And then I woke up 10 days later going, I'm really into this person. So I said, can I come see you? And she said, yeah. And I walked into her place, said hi. And I said, look, I want to pursue something with you. And she goes, I'm interested. I just laid a big, gigantic kiss on her with her permission, by the way. And then everything took off from there because we built a foundation based on friendship, not based on chemistry, although we were experiencing chemistry in a different form. And I think that's the problem today is we're so hyper-focused on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection and spend so little time at a heart connection, at a friendship connection. And look, I get it. Women are going to say, well, guys only care about sex. Well, I'm the horniest guy on the planet, believe me. I had desires for physical intimacy even on our first date. But what really built our relationship is we built a friendship first and then ignited it with the physical sexual piece.
And that I loved because that is so true. I think when you go on these first dates, like you're like, oh, I didn't feel the connection right away. But there is something really beautiful when you kind of keep coming back at each other and then you kind of have this dialogue. And then the dialogue is like you really take the time to know the person that's inside. And you're like, I really like this. And I've had a couple of other friends that did that too. And they were like, their marriage they got married and they were extremely happy. But they said if they had gone with that chemistry right away kind of relationship, they said they probably would have picked the wrong person, which I thought was an interesting comment. So it's kind of correlates
By
with
the
what
way,
you.
yeah, and before I forget, I want you to know my circle of friends, and I call it my spiritual community. It just means I think these are emotionally grown up people that have a connection with their divinity. Almost all the men they've met their spouses within the last, 1 to 10 years. All of them are with older women. Now, a lot of them, it's just 1 month older, this or that, but not one of them is with anyone significantly younger. I just want you to say that. I just want everyone, especially the women, to know, yes, that's a lot of men seek that, but that doesn't mean that's what they get, okay? Believe me, even my own ego wanted someone 10 or 15 years younger, but it didn't matter. Just because my ego wanted that didn't mean I chased my ego. What mattered most was a heart connection.
That is such a healthy comment and outlook.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. For the ladies listening, I get we can look at the glass half empty. It's easy to see this dysfunctional dating marketplace women. I get that it's like the Hunger Games out there. I get it. You feel like you're in a fight for life, But here's what I want you to know. You can either focus on what's wrong or you can set your North Star on what you want. Like really be so crystal clear on your North Star and really hold space as that your vision And recognize that, yeah, you might have a bad date, you might have someone who ghosts or breadcrumbs or all that stuff. It happens. Yes, it does. But put your energy into what you want to feel in relationship. And by the way, I'm going to share something with both of you. Women come to me all the time. Jonathon, I know what I want. I know what I want. I know what I want in relationship. And then they go through this proprietary coaching program I created. And can you guess what they say every single time after doing this inner work?
No.
Wow. I have
They
no
say
idea
things
this is
like,
what I wanted.
why didn't my parents teach me this? Why didn't I learn this in school? Why didn't I learn this before I married the wrong guy? I didn't realize I didn't know what I want, because here's the sad part. This is where you women, please forgive me, because that sounded like like a little bit of a misogynistic, and I didn't mean it that way. Ladies have a propensity to focus on fantasy. You guys were indoctrinated with Disney and movies and Notebook and Serendipity, and the fantasy is what oftentimes drives the bus. Men focus on physical connection. Women oftentimes focus on the fantasy. And part of the work I do with women is dismantling that, because I'm going to tell you something, when women allow themselves to really open their heart to somebody that's worthy of it and vice versa, you'd be surprised. A lot of that fantasy disappears, and then you're going, this is what it feels like to actually have a heart-centered relationship.
So how do you help a woman really understand, again, midlife is a very different dating scenario.
Yeah.
As you know, Lizzie, it's a very different dating scenario than when you're in your 20s or, younger or even older. So how do you help a woman understand her value, her worth, her incredible beauty when she's going into these relationships, and, her life is very different than when she was young? How do you help a woman when they come to you, to find that so they can attract to a really good guy?
So I love this question. It starts with, and write this down if you're watching, write down the words, know thyself. Know thyself, know myself kind of thing. And first, I invite everyone to learn a little bit about the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. So I would first learn about something known as love attachment style. It's been around for 50 plus years. I'm going to pull out a book that's very popular. It's called Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. Okay? And when you first learn, we humans oftentimes have an insecure attachment style, meaning we bond with someone from an insecure way, excuse me. And there's two types of insecure. There's anxious and avoidant. And I invite you to read the book to learn about that. So learn your attachment style. Now, here's the tricky part. Everyone who takes the test, they all think they're secure, because everybody's living in that fantasy. Remember, I talked about that delusion about themselves. So when they answer these questions, you have to do one of the deeper psychological tests to determine your attachment style. Learn your attachment style. Number 2, I call this self-awareness. That is knowing your fears, your insecurities, your negative patterns, your judgment for others, your limiting beliefs, how your actions affect other people. Until you become relatively self-aware, particularly in your fears and insecurities, your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, without an understanding of that, which encompasses self-love, is understanding this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Oftentimes, men and women choose the same partner over and over and over again. So without some real introspective work. And then it's taking self-responsibility, like knowing what your triggers are. I know my triggers. I'll give you an example for everyone watching. I am terrible at international travel. I get spastic when I'm in a place where I don't feel comfortable. I am, because I feel like I'm out of control. Now, I'm kind of over dramatizing this, but I know this is one of my triggers. So I'm going to be candid with you. With my girlfriend, my beloved, I was very upfront. Look, I know every woman wants a guy that has his passport stamped 47 times and can travel around the world like he's spinning a basketball, like it's that easy. I'm a basket case. So I told her this up front. I'm like, okay, Now, and I asked, are you good at it? And she said, yeah, I'm good at it. I'm like, good. I'm just going to trust you. Please don't look at me as a weak, inferior, not divinely masculine kind of man. I'm just aware of my stuff. And so when you're aware and you introduce that to another person, just say, hey, this is who I am. I'm not best at it. I'm working on getting better. And you take when you're self-aware, you take personal responsibility or self-responsibility. I think these are good places to start. It's know thyself. Now, again, most people operate, I'm okay, everybody else is the problem. Or worse, okay, so what happens is some women, and this is men too, they act super entitled, or the opposite, a doormat. And I'm just looking for someone who operates in the sweet spot, not super entitled, not a doormat, just basic self-confidence. And here's the thing, most human beings, a lot of people that seem overly confident, a lot of those people are just faking it anyway. Most human beings are riddled with emotional stuff. That's why I said when you read my bio, dating and relationships trigger our emotional crap like nobody's business whatsoever. I mean, it can trigger our stuff. And what's interesting is if you come from a place of curiosity about yourself, but more importantly, just recognize that every other human being is just as flawed as you are. Okay, they're not perfect. See, I think when we operate from this expectation that you've got to be, I'm not perfect, but I expect you to be perfect, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Jonathon, I will just say that's just amazing. I really don't even have any questions for you, unless there's anything else you want to offer to our audience about, just that midlife transition, coming out of like a really traumatic experience and having to take a hard look at yourself and realize that, I need something different. I need to change. I mean, what else would you offer to anybody out there? What are some words of wisdom?
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you both for allowing me to be on. This has been a lot of fun and a little different. I love you both. You've got great energy. You're great interviewers too. I just want to acknowledge that. It's interesting. So this thing about life, when many of my friends walked out of my son's funeral, and by the way, if you ever want to have an interesting experience, go to a funeral, and you walk out of a funeral, oftentimes say, I'm not going to waste one day of my life. And that usually lasts for about 72 hours, and then we go back to our patterns, okay? What I learned with my son is that love and gratitude are powerful motivators in life. And so we can look at our past experiences from a place of victim consciousness. And sadly, many people operate from that place. And listen, if you had to call a doctor, an attorney, or a policeman, listen, I get that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking garden variety fucked up relationships in the romantic realm. We've all had them, okay? You can focus on what was wrong from a place of victim consciousness, or you can operate from victor consciousness and go, you know what? I don't want to waste one day of my life. I'm going to focus on what I want. I'm always going to do my best to operate from the 4 agreements. If anyone's read the book, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. Operate from your best self, from that place, and be ruthless about it. And I know that sounds a little off-putting to be ruthless, but have a determination to go after what you want. If you want a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship, then be like, I want that. Like, scream from the top of my lungs, that's what I want. And I'm going to do the work necessary. And I'm going to have to sometimes do things I don't want to do. I can't stand online dating, but it's still the best place to meet people. I don't like awkward dates, but you persevere, because if you look at anyone who's been successful in their life, they were so committed they knew their why so strongly. They knew their why. They were so committed to it. And they operated from a place of hope, belief, and knowing. When you operate from a place, start it with hope, go to belief, but this is going to happen, and you know it in your bones, And I'm living proof of this. You know, I'm in what I believe is the most healthy, juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship in my life. I had to go through all this work to get there. And look, if I can do it, and by the way, it's you don't have to be. This isn't gender based. Anybody can do it. You just have to be, you know, I said ruthless, but I mean just be determined. That's all. And it's okay.
And
Okay.
consistent. Yeah.
And consistent. Okay, so last question. With that being said, Jonathon, with you talking about that fierce determination to choose, it feels like to me, like if you're in that situation where you are like, I feel like a worthless piece of shit. Like I feel like I don't matter. I don't have anything to offer anymore. Like I'm not young and, you know, whatever. Fill in the blank. Skinny, strong, beautiful, healthy, energetic, you know, accomplished, successful. Just fill in the blank. And you're like, I'm not those things anymore. But what you just said to me made it sound like you can make a decision on how you categorize yourself. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, you know, I mean, and thank you for bringing up those modalities because you can live in that space of what's wrong, or you can, and listen, for everyone, I know it might sound as easy as flipping a switch, and quite frankly, it is. Believe it or not, it's as easy as flipping a switch. It is. But at the same time, we humans don't believe it. So do the inner work, the personal development, self-help, spiritual work, and therapy. Do the work to build the confidence to, and it's not about just finding your life mate tomorrow. It's really, you have the power to find the life mate within yourself. You actually have that. Focus on loving yourself, and you'd be surprised how all those other things will start to happen in your life when you invest in yourself. And maybe it just starts with an affirmation, maybe it goes to an exercise class, maybe it's just spending time with friends. There's so many different modalities of loving yourself that goes beyond just the mental. And we all have that power. I'm here to say you actually have that power. You'd be surprised how powerful human beings can be.
And I love that because I feel like what you were saying earlier was that basically if you want that power and empowerment, and ladies, do we not want that empowerment? You know, especially
Yeah.
midlife when we feel like, you know, through a toxic relationship or, you know, whatever, you lost your job, you're starting over, you don't have what you used to have, you've lost your power. But according to what Jonathon is saying, make a decision. Make a decision. I will not lose my power. It might look different than when I was in my 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
but it's going to be actually more real, more pure, and more based on my inner work than just whatever's on the outside. That's what I feel like I'm hearing from you, and I love it, Jonathon. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Can I say one more thing? Is that okay?
Please. Yes,
You know,
please.
because I recognize that toxic relationships, painful relationships, all that stuff can set us backward. But I mean this from the bottom of my heart. When one invests in their own self-love, you'd be surprised how juicy when your life can be. And I use the term juicy because I love biting into something and the juice just dribbling down my face. And it's something that I just feel as though that's how life is, because the pain was there to prepare us to recognize all the good, and really be in a state of love, compassion, passion, empathy, all of things. We wouldn't know those feelings if we didn't know those other feelings. And that's what I just want to add.
I love that. And I want to say we're going to dedicate this podcast episode to Connor because
Oh,
I am sure if he had a dad like you, he was a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I'm so sorry that you lost him. I'm grateful for everything that you've gleaned from that experience. And I know that he's very happy wherever he is. But I just want to say we're dedicating this to Connor and every person in your life that you adored and loved and cherished who has passed on.
Yeah.
thank you so much. By the way, for the record, yellow butterflies visit me literally all the time. So I'm sure I'll see one right after I
Oh,
walk out of
My gosh. Okay.
I just
thank you for listening to our channel, Surviving Toxic Relationships. If Jonathan's story resonated with you, please do three things. 1, share this episode with someone who needs permission to heal. Number 2, subscribe so you don't miss more trauma to recovery conversations. And number 3, drop one small boundary you'll practice this week in the comments. We're here to cheer you on so no one feels alone. Thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful day.